A sit-in at Egypt's parliament has turned into a confrontation between protesters and security forces. The violence was sparked by rumours that soldiers broke up the protest and attacked the demonstrators. Protesters then threw stones at security forces, who responded with tear gas and water cannon. Okay, well, let's get the latest now from Rawya Rageh, who joins us now on the line from Cairo. Rawya, last time I spoke to you, it was an incredibly volatile situation. What's the latest you're hearing from there?
It continued, the violence continued for the past few hours, Laura, with even very unfortunate scenes of the officers, the soldiers on the rooftops, actually flipping really obscene hand gestures to the protesters, angering them, with the protesters chanting, "The people want the downfall of the field marshal." And once that was chanted, you could see how the scene was immediately going to turn even much worse. The attack that initially began with an attack from rooftops, with the soldiers throwing pretty much everything they could have hold their hands on, from bottles, tiles, even at one point furniture, at protesters from the rooftops. As we were actually filming that to try to explain to our viewers how the events unfolded, the violence even got worse, with the violence moving to ground level. Let's take a look at what it was like just less than an hour ago, Laura.
The parliament building is in that direction, and earlier in the morning the soldiers were pelting stones on protesters from the rooftop. Clearly somebody now on the street level is attacking the protesters. It's a very intense scene, as you can see the smoke billowing from the fire of the government buildings there. People are incredibly angry that they are being attacked by their own military. The soldiers are on the street.
Certainly very volatile scenes there in Cairo. What's happening now, and where do you see these protesters going?
Well, once the soldiers arrived on the street, people started dispersing in different directions, mainly because they were being beaten up by batons. These soldiers clearly were not holding back, attacking everyone in sight, including journalists. Our colleague from the website, Evan Hill, was one of those who was beaten up by the soldiers, by the military soldiers. He was briefly held alongside one of the prominent protesters here. His passport, his phone, all of his equipment was confiscated. He was mildly or slightly injured. He's now been released, but his items, his personal belongings, are still in the custody of the military police. People are still continuing their standoff there. The violence has stopped for a short while, but clearly an ensuing standoff with both sides not willing to move back from that scene. Laura?
And Rawya, of course, this is a time of great transition for Egypt. This sit-in was taking place during those first few stages of parliamentary voting. Where are we at now with that voting?
Well, that's the very unfortunate development, really, Laura, because let's just take a look at where exactly this violence was happening. It was happening outside the parliament building, ironically under a banner that read, "Democracy is the inherent right of the people." The protester who was captured by soldiers last night and beaten up was beaten up inside the parliament building, supposedly the icon of that democratic transition. We have been seeing elections underway now. It's a staggered parliamentary elections. One round and a second round just ended yesterday, and a third round was supposed to begin in the coming few days. And in the middle of all of this, we see this campaign targeting the protesters who've been camped outside the cabinet despite the elections, insisting on sending a message to the military, to the government, that despite the fact that elections are taking place, they're still unhappy about their policies, about the overarching way the military has been dealing with the people. And just to give you an idea, people are telling us, in fact, they have a sense now that the military is being emboldened in dealing with protesters this way as a result of the successful, or largely relatively peaceful, first two rounds of elections. People feel the military feels triumphant, and as a result feels emboldened to attack protesters and dissidents. Now, this is a very interesting development, because this confrontation today was entirely military versus protesters, not the police. So a very interesting development there, Laura.
Okay, yeah, Rawya, we'll keep a close eye on it. Thanks very much for joining us with the latest from Cairo.